Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what crossing.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good morning from the Batcave. It is February 6th, Saturday. I'm going to try to make a quick 10-point series on the top 10 reasons why the Rapture is mid-trib, and just try to make them simple and clear and have some short videos that you guys can easily pass around and people can watch quickly and discern pretty easily. So this first one is just going to be on basic hermeneutics and just straightforward how to read the Bible. This is very simple stuff here. It's not meant to be complicated. If you were to go to any Bible college or seminary class, you're going to take a class called hermeneutics, which is basically a class about rules of interpretation. And these rules are ancient. These really go back to any kind of philosophy or law, or specifically in Bible college theology, the Bible and what it's saying. It's going to basically establish some basic principles so you're not taking things out of context and you're understanding it clearly. And two of the first and most simple rules you have in hermeneutics is one is that you look at first mention when you're trying to define something, which means if you want to just define a term, whether that term is an idiom, that term is a parable, it is a metaphor, whatever it is, you go back to the first time you find that thing used, and then you go through the history of the usage of that thing to try to discern what that metaphor is meant to represent. That's one. The second one is that you always interpret the unclear passages by the clear passages. There's actually a really clear example of interpreting the unclear by the clear here. So if you go to Matthew 24, for instance, it says right here, "For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together." Well, that's a metaphor. What does that mean? But then you read immediately after it, he says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with the sound of a great trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." So he gives you something unclear, wherever the carcass is, the eagles will be gathered together, and then he follows it up by something clear. He will send his angels to the sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from one end of heaven to the other. Now, if you read other passages, we know that the dead are raised, and those who are alive are caught up together with them in the clouds. This is a description of that. This is a metaphor that's unclear. This is a description of that's clear. And so we always let the clear interpret the unclear. Now, that's one example. Now, if you take those two principles, you can go back to anyone who might say these eagles are not angels. They're not referring to angels. Well, we can go through the scriptures and see if eagles ever refer to angels. If they're saying, well, this carcass is not referring to the dead that are raised, well, we can go back and look at carcasses and see if the dead is raised. So that's an example of letting the unclear interpret the clear. So we're going to go through this exercise with eagles and see if eagles are meant to represent angels or something else, and if the carcasses are meant to represent dead bodies or something else. So first we're going to type in the word eagle, and then we're going to type in the word eagles into our search queue. So we'll start with eagle. I guess we'll start with the word eagles here because it looks like that's going to be the first usage, is going to be in Exodus 9:24. Exodus comes before Leviticus. So the first usage of eagles is going to be in Exodus 19:4 when Moses is leading the Israelites out of Egypt. That's important. In Revelation, in chapter 11, they referred to Jerusalem as Sodom and Egypt. And that's referring to Lot's flight from Sodom before it's destroyed, and the Jews' flight from Egypt after the Passover under Moses. And from here, we get the first usage of the term eagles in the Bible. This is the first ever time the word is used. First ever time the word eagle is used is in Leviticus, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So it says, "You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself." So notice God is bearing them on eagle's wings and bringing them to himself. That's the very first usage of the word eagles. Now we're going to go even further because Exodus is not the oldest book in the Bible, but it is the first book in order of publication. The oldest book in the Bible is Job. And in Job 39:27, he also uses the term eagles. And notice he says, "Does the eagle mount up at thy command and make her nest on high. So we're going to go look at that entire passage in context. It says, does the eagle mount up at thy command and make her nest on high? She dwelleth and abideth on the rock, upon the crag of the rock and the strong place. And from thence she seeketh the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Her young ones also suck up the blood. Where the slain are, there is she. So what is that talking about? Well, an eagle, notice it says that she sees her prey afar off, and her young ones suck up the blood. Where the slain are, there is she. So she has to be where the slain corpse is, because her young are sucking up the blood from that corpse. Well, first of all, does an eagle go swoop down on a dead body, or does an eagle swoop down on a living body? And the answer is a living body. Eagles are known for seeing prey far off and swooping down and catching up that prey. Then they take it up and they fly it up to the nest, and it's usually dead by that time or immobilized, and then they throw it in the nest, and then their young suck it up. They don't bring their young out of the nest to go fly down on the ground and peck at that. They're not vultures. Okay? Their young can't fly yet. They're sitting in the nest. They're feeding them in the nest until they get strong enough to fly. And so this is the oldest book in the Bible, and this is the first mention of it, and it says, where the slain are, there is she. Now compare that to what Jesus says here. He says, this is in Luke 17, he's going to use the same passage. He's saying, where, Lord? And he said unto them, wherever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together. So where is the body? Where are the eagles gathered together? Well, the eagles gathered together is referring to the mother and her young. Where are they gathered together? And the answer is, on the rock, upon the crag of the rock, and the strong place, in her nest on high. So she swooped up and she's brought this eagle up to her nest that's on high. And in Luke 17, he's saying that wherever the body is, there the eagles are gathered together. Likewise, in Matthew 24, he's going to say, for wherever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Now remember, in Job it says, wherever the slain are, there is she. Okay? So these phrases are all so similar, you can't mistake that they're referring to the same thing. Where is the carcass or the body, if you will? Well, the carcass and the body can represent either a dead or a living body. Because remember, she swoops up live prey and catches them. But typically, by the time they get there, they're dead. That idiom is present because when the rapture occurs, so will a resurrection of the dead. She swoops up, she takes them up to her nest, which is in the crag of a rock on high. Well, do we go up to a crag of a rock on high? And the answer is yes. We are actually caught up to the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem is actually a large rock. The New Jerusalem is actually a large cube, and it's made out of a sardis stone, which is a red bloodstone-colored rock. And we're taken up in it. That's where Jesus says, I go to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house there are many mansions. And where I am, when I come back, I'll receive you to where I am. So he's telling them he's going to catch them up to that place where he's preparing many mansions, and that's the New Jerusalem. It's a giant 1,500-mile cubed city that we go to in the clouds. Huge. So when you look at this idiom, it looks like, well, that's just like how the eagle captures up the prey and brings it up to her young. We would be caught up and brought up into the New Jerusalem. So we want to look for ample witnesses to testify that that's the case. Well, if we go right to, again, the first usage in Scripture in order, we have an example of God catching up the Jews on eagle's wings, or he says he bears them on eagle's wings and brings them to himself. Okay? Now, the example of this is a type, because God is bearing them on eagle's wings out of Egypt to bring them to himself on Mount Sinai at that time. Okay? So that's what he's doing with the Jews. And we want to see if eagles is generally used in a similar context, representing God's carrying us up or God's protection of us, because that's really what's happening in the rapture. So we see other usages of the words eagles, but a famous one is in Isaiah 40:31. And if you read that whole passage in the context, he says, even youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not go faint. So that is a commentary about God's provision for us, and God supernaturally empowering us to basically have strength even if we would grow weary. So if we get into Leviticus in the law, we find that the eagles are typically one of the birds that are considered an abomination to eat. You'll have eagles, ostrich, pelicans, vultures, most birds of prey they're not allowed to eat. But of all these birds, only one of them is used to typically represent a good angel. Okay. Then the other usage of it, and this is common, is about the eagle putting his wings over the righteous to protect them. So this is Deuteronomy 32:21. It says, "As an eagle stirreth up her nest, and fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, and taketh them, beareth them on her wings." Okay? It says, "When the Most High divided up the nations their inheritance, and separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel." That means because Israel had 70 sons in Egypt, there are 70 nations, so that's a reference to the Gentiles. "For the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in the desert land and in the waste howling wilderness, and he led him about, and instructed him, and kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up her nest, fluttereth over her young, and spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on their wings. So the Lord alone did lead them, and there was no strange God with them." So it's representing the God spreading his wings over them and taking care of them. If you remember, Jesus said in Luke and in Matthew regarding Jerusalem, he wanted to spread his wings over them like a hen spreads her wings over her chicks. This is that same idiom. And then he says in Psalm 103 again, he says, "The Lord satisfies the mouth with good things, so that the youth is renewed like the eagles." Psalm 49, this is talking about Israel. He says, "Behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle, and spread his wings over Basra. And at that day, the heart of the mighty men of Edom shall be as the heart of the woman in her pangs." This is the prophecy about Israel fleeing to Basra in the last days when they finally flee Jerusalem, and he spreads his wings over them there. In Ezekiel 10, and this is also going to be in the book of Revelation, you're going to have these 4 cherubim that are before the throne of God. And one has the face of a man, one has the face of a lion, one has the face of here it says the face of a cherub, and then one has the face of the eagle. So you always have one of these 4 cherubim with the face of the eagle. Again, in Revelation, you have the first with the face like a lion, the second like a calf, the third is the face of a man, and the fourth was the face of a flying eagle. So one of these 4 angelic beings is a flying eagle. In Revelation 12, the woman, which represents Israel, is given 2 great wings of an eagle to fly into the wilderness. That's her going to Basra. If remember, he says he carries them on wings of eagles, so that's referring to their deliverance. And so while the metaphor of an eagle can refer to anything coming swiftly, like including their enemies coming to judge them, in most cases, when it refers to Israel or when it refers to God's people, it refers to the eagle either catching them up to support them, to carry them into safety, or the eagle spreading its wings over them to protect them. Okay? Well, both of those things are going to happen in the last days. In terms of the church, which is going to be predominantly Gentile, they're going to be caught up with eagles up into the New Jerusalem. And then Israel, which is going to be going through the time of Jacob's trouble, they're going to be brought out into the wilderness and protected through that tribulation. So if you go back to Luke 17, which is the very first usage of anything having to do with the end times, anything having to do with the second coming, anything having to do with the rapture, or anything that happens in the last days, the very first teaching on the last days, you're going to have Jesus say this. Starting at verse 22, "And he said to his disciples, The days will come when you shall desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you shall not see it. And they will say to you, See here or see there. Go not after them or follow them. For as the lightning that lighteneth out of one part under the heaven shineth unto the other part under the heaven, so shall the Son of Man be in his day." So this is talking about the second coming of Christ, him appearing like lightning in the sky. "But first he must suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, and they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all." So remember, when Noah entered into the ark, he went in, God closed the door behind him, and then he started to pour out his judgment. "Likewise, also as it was in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, and they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all." So he's referring to his second coming and the judgment. He gives you two parables. He says it's like the days of Noah, and it's also like the days of Lot. So in the days of Noah, they go into this ark, and God closes the door and then begins to pour out his judgment. In the days of Lot, Lot flees the city, and then God begins to pour out his judgment. Both of those things are going to happen on the day the Lord appears. The Gentiles are going to be taken up to the New Jerusalem, and they're going to be safely put in there, and then God's going to start to pour out his judgment. The Jews are going to flee from Jerusalem to Basra, and then God's going to pour out his judgment. Both of those things are going to happen simultaneously. That's why he says, but the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day the Son of Man is revealed. So notice he says, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. Until the day. Okay? And then in the second, he says, the same day that Lot went out of Sodom. So notice he's emphasizing the very day that they go into that ark, the very day that Lot flees Sodom, that's when the judgment starts to be poured out. Even thus shall it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So he's saying it's going to be exactly like that in the day that the Son of Man is revealed. So in the day that the Son of Man is revealed, some are going to flee out of the city, others are going to be put up in the ark in that day. So he says, in that day, making sure they know it's the same day that the Son of Man is revealed, he which is upon the housetop and his stuff in the house, let him not come down and take it away. He that is in the field, let him not likewise return back. Remember Lot's wife. Whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. I tell you, in that night there shall be two men in one bed, the one shall be taken and the other left. Two women shall be grinding together, the one shall be taken, the other shall be left. Two men shall be in the field, the one shall be taken and the other shall be left. And they answered and said to him, Where, Lord? And he said unto them, Wheresoever the body is, there will the eagles be gathered together. So what he's saying to them is it's going to be like people being taken and put in Noah's ark, and likewise, and also like Lot fleeing the city. Then he goes on to tell his Jewish audience to flee the city and not to look back. And remember, just like Lot's wife, don't look back or you'll be destroyed. And then he's saying to those people who are fleeing the city, that night you'll be one taken and one left. So he's telling them that they're going to see one taken and one left. He's telling them that after this, there's going to be one taken and one left that night. And they answered and they said, Where? Where, Lord? Now, they're asking him where in reference to them being taken. Where are they taken? And he said unto them, Wheresoever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together. And he hasn't given Matthew 24 yet, because that's going to be later on. So they only have one thing to refer to if they know their scriptures as what this is talking to. And most of your Bibles are going to have this cross-reference in there, and that is Job 39:30. Her young ones also suck up the blood, and where the slain are, there is she. That's where they're going to be taken, where the slain of the eagle are. And where is that? It says, She dwelleth and abideth on the rock, upon the crag of the rock, and the strong place. So where are they taken? He gives them this metaphor. On high, in a rock. That's where they're going to be. On high, in a rock. Well, where are they on high in a rock? They are in a giant city that looks exactly like this. Now, if you go to John 14, Jesus says to his disciples before he goes to his death, he says, Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. So Jesus is telling him that his Father's house has many mansions in it. And he says, And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. So Jesus is telling him when he comes back, he's going to take them to his Father's house with many mansions in it. Okay? Well, in the book of Revelation, in chapter 20, or chapter 21, it describes this city. And he says it's the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So this giant city, this New Jerusalem, is God's city. And it says, in the great voice out of heaven, saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be with his people, and God himself shall be with them, and will be their God. So this is God's house coming down. And when it begins to describe what it looks like, it says, And he carried me away into the spirit, great and high, to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven and from God, having the glory of God, and her light was like the stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Well, this image is a jasper stone. And if you had to look at this, is about what a clear jasper stone looks like. And the point that you're getting is any way you look at it, this is a red stone that they're taken up to. But it's a stone. And it says it had a wall great and high and had 12 gates. Okay? And this wall that is great and high, he says the building of the wall of it was of jasper. So that same jasper stone makes up its wall. And the city was as pure gold, like unto clear glass. So this city has a wall. The city itself is of pure gold, but the wall is of jasper stone. So it's this red color. And he says, and he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits, which is about 300 feet thick. A cubit is an arm's length plus the hand's breadth. So what you're looking at is about 2 feet. Okay, so 144 cubits is about 300 feet thick. So it's a 300 feet thick jasper stone wall. That's where we're taken up to. That's what's going to be in the sky. And that's what Jesus means when he says, wheresoever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Because the eagle's nest is up high in the crags of the rock. And we're going to be taken up high into this giant stone city with a stone wall that's a cube of jasper. And the eagles that gather us together, if we proceed to Matthew 24, that's a metaphor because he uses this passage again, wheresoever the carcasses, there the eagles will be gathered together. And he says he will send out his angels with the sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So we're going to mount up on wings like eagles, y'all. And he's going to be fulfilling all those prophecies about carrying up his people on wings of eagles and bearing them up away from danger. So he's going to put us up in the crag of the rock, just like he put Moses in the crag of the rock and put his hand over it, so that the glory of God would pass by him and Moses would not die. Just like he puts the Shulamite into the crack of the rock while he chases away the foxes that destroy the vineyard. The vineyard's a parable for Israel. And when is all this going to happen? He said, even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So this is all going to happen on the day that the Lord appears. This day can be called the day of the Lord, or the day of Christ, or the day of the Lord's appearing, or the revelation of Jesus Christ. Those are all terms for the day that the Lord appears. The day of the Lord, the day of the Lord's appearing, the day of Christ, and the revelation. All those terms are going to be used throughout the New Testament to refer to the day when Jesus Christ comes back. It's a single day where he comes back, he captures up his church, he allows the Jews to flee from Jerusalem to Basra, where he protects them there. He pours out his wrath on the wicked in the form of the bowl judgment, and then he sets up his kingdom for 1,000 years. That is the teaching of the entire New Testament. It's clear, it's consistent. You don't need to have additional proofs beyond that, but I'm going to give you a whole bunch more proofs beyond that. So I hope you guys are blessed by this. I hope this is something that you guys can wrap your minds around and share with others. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Batman out. Peace.